How's it going, guys? My name's Marty. Welcome back to my YouTube channel. So today I wanted to talk about another cool guitar in my collection. This is probably like the most in-demand one I would have in terms of if I listed it for sale. It's an Edwards E-LP-112CE, which is a real long model name, but if you're watching this, you maybe already know what this guitar is. Edwards is a brand that is owned by ESP, and they've become a lot more known in the last 5 or 6 years. This is due to a few big YouTubers doing videos talking about these guitars and bringing a bit of a spotlight to them. One of them being Agrifish. I didn't actually know much about Edwards guitars until he did a video on this, so he had actually been looking for one of these exact models, and I saw the video and thought that's really cool and I'd love to get one. And then quickly learned they're so hard to find, and usually if someone owns one of them, they know exactly what they have, so the used price is insanely high. So for anybody who doesn't know, Edwards is a brand owned by ESP. They can basically produce very traditional looking guitars for the Asian market and get away with it. So obviously this is extremely inspired by Gibson, even down to the headstock. If ESP brought this guitar out for the US market, for example, they would just get sued right away because it's too like a Gibson Les Paul. Things like the headstock, like that open book design, like it's so traditional Les Paul. So if you look at their actual ESPs, they have a slightly different headstock design, the body's different, and I think that's a way of getting past the copyright stuff. So a cool thing with Edwards guitars is they seem to be very good at looking at what's popular and what's in demand and basically making it. So there's a few guitars that Edwards have put out, and they're basically inspired by signature models which maybe never were a thing. So for example, the first one I ever owned was a John Sykes model, and it was inspired by that. It was a black Les Paul custom with the silver hardware and stuff like that. There was also a Randy Rhoads model which was in that sort of famous cream white, you know, TV yellow nearly, which I also owned. I did a review of that guitar as well, so you can go check that out. But this here is a wee bit more out there. So James Hetfield had a Les Paul custom refinished in the mid 2000s. So I think it was initially black, but he must have had it stripped back and then resprayed in a matte purple. And everybody went mad for this. So I think people were hoping Gibson would actually make one of them. They never did in the end, but Edwards seemed to jump on that right away, and that's where this came from. So they don't say this in any of their sort of specs. It's heavily rumoured that that's what it is, basically, because they seem to just look at what's popular and make a model around it. So that's why you have the John Sykes model, the Randy Rhoads model, and then this. So it's kind of like the unofficial Gibson James Hetfield signature model. It came in 2 finishes, a gloss black and then this, which is the dark purple satin. This is the one that most people are after because it heavily resembles James's guitar. I'll get some photos and put it up on screen. But for the most part, it's obviously built off the Les Paul Custom platform. This one is a little different, and I'll explain why. For the most part, it is the same guitar, so it has that really nice satin purple finish, really aged looking yellow binding, an ebony fretboard with the block inlays. I think the inlay material is either plastoid, which is a cheaper material that companies use for inlays, or it could be mother of pearl. I'll double check with the specs here. They call it pearloid actually, which I think is the same idea. I think it is just it's meant to be a cheaper version of mother of pearl. The nut is bone from what I remember. Yeah, just check. The nut is bone, which is pretty cool. These guitars always come with Godo tuners, not usually lock-in. Maybe the newer Edwards do, but this is a 2006 model guitar, I believe, and that was before lock-in tuners were a real popular thing to have on guitars. I have had a tech swap these out for the the newer version of the Goto tuners, which are all lock-in, so that's pretty cool, and it's just a drop-in modification. As far as the bridge goes, it's the usual winning combo of a Goto bridge and a Goto tailpiece, so very high-end parts. They feel great. They don't feel like they're ever going to break, so that's why I always change the tuners to the same Goto lock-in tuners. The pickups I currently have in it are the EMG Fat 55s, so I was going for a stage of trying all the retroactive pickups that they built and really love these ones. These are the ones that are in it at the moment. I actually think the guitar looks far better when it just has the more minimalist EMG black plastic pickups in it, but I just really like the sound of these ones, so I wanted to try it. Initially I did have a set of 5766s in here and it looked amazing, but I didn't like how it sounded in this particular guitar, which was quite strange. Looking at the original spec sheet, normally these would come with dual 81s, so it's actually a different pickup configuration that James would normally use. James normally used a 60 and an 81 until he got his signature model set, obviously. But maybe back in 2005, he was using dual 81s, I'm not too sure. Configuration wise, it's the usual Gibson arrangement where it's 2 volumes and 2 tones. The dark purple finish is obviously all over it, and it's obviously matched on the headstock, which is cool. I'll maybe talk about the fact that the logo's been carved off this. So this wasn't me, before anybody rips me apart in the comments section for this. I'd been looking for one of these for about 5 or 6 years and then found one on a Japanese auction site. The previous owner had basically took all the original hardware off and swapped it to chrome. It had really cheap, nasty pickups put in it, but obviously the worst part was they had decided to carve off the Edwards logo. I have no idea why you would do this. There's probably people out there that see the Edwards logo on a Gibson style headstock and just think it's really cheap. But I actually think the Edwards logo is a really nice design. And these aren't cheap, nasty guitars. They're actually really nice to play and really well spec'd. You know, they're quite a premium product, especially when Gibson don't make one of these. So my thinking is that the previous owner intended to put a Gibson decal on that, but unfortunately they just made a dog's dinner of it by removing the Edwards logo. And I do have plans to maybe eventually replace that, but it's quite hard to find a high quality decal, and I would still need someone to do a really good job at refinishing that aspect of it. But you can see it has that traditional Gibson open book headstock design, which looks really nice. As well as this is an interesting touch for the Edwards. So rather than doing the Gibson Diamond or whatever you call it, they have their own version of that, which is pretty cool. Truss rod cover where you would expect it. As I said before, the previous owner swapped all the original hardware out for chrome stuff, so I had to get a new bridge and tailpiece, as well as the new lock and tuners, and then all the plastics. But yeah, that's pretty much it for this guitar. Modifications wise, I don't think I would do anything further. It's obviously been modified quite heavily. I did swap the strap buttons out for the shallow locking ones. Just it's quite a common modification I'll do to most guitars, very easy to do. But yeah, that's pretty much it. So let me know what you think. These are insanely difficult to find. I'd seen one go up on Reverb for $2,000 a while ago. There's someone else looking about $4,000 for one of these on eBay as well. It might be me. So it's the sort of thing, if it sells, it sells. I can't really be mad, but I would actually love to hold on to it. Very difficult to find guitars, very cool, very unique. It'd be interesting to see if Gibson would ever actually try and do one of these. I do think they should probably consider doing like a limited run, because they are a very talked about model. This is the thing, Gibson won't do them, but Edwards will. That being said, they don't make this guitar anymore. I think they only produced it for maybe a couple of years, but it's really cool. I would really suggest checking out more of the Edwards guitars, especially that sort of mid 2000s to early 2010s. So I've lost count of how many ones I've owned, and I've done reviews on a lot of them. They're phenomenal guitars, especially if you like modern meets traditional. They seem to do a lot of Les Paul customs, which are more geared towards metal players and things like that. But yeah, that's about it. Let me know what you think about this guitar. I think I've used it in a video. I think I did a Metallica If Darkness Had a Sun cover with this guitar. As I say, I do actually have it up for sale, but I would love to hold on to it, but we'll see. But let me know what you think, and I'll see you in the next one.